I brought up my Pocket 6K rig in a previous video and I mentioned that I do an update to show the new setup. So this will be a quick video, so let's just go ahead and get straight into it. If you're a wedding filmmaker and you're thinking about buying a Pocket 6K or 6K Pro, I would definitely check out this video that I did that goes over some of my favorite reasons why I love using my 6K setup and some of the things that you should consider before you actually bite the bullet and buy one of these cameras. I used a SMALLRIG cage since it was the first one I could get my hands on. The only reason I got the cage to begin with was because Blackmagic's battery grip for the Pro has a horrible wobble to it, especially when using a heavier lens. When I would use it on the gimbal, I get this crazy bounce, and if I cranked up the motor strength to compensate, the gimbal would vibrate like crazy. I have fixed this solution and we'll get into those details here in a little bit. For the battery solution now, I use a SMALLRIG V-mount plate that's mounted to the top. I still use the Tilta 15mm rod mounting plate that's included with the Nucleus Nano, but you can buy one separately on Tilta's website if you have to. I went with this setup instead of using the Anton Bayer base batteries because I don't always need a big battery. I wanted to focus this rig on being as light and minimal as possible. Only going for a bigger battery when it made sense for it, like filming Catholic ceremonies, live streams, or other situations where you can't afford to stop recording to change out the battery. I use the Zhiyun Transmount battery pack because it has a number of different ports: USB-C, USB-A, 2 D-tap ports, and a 7-volt DC power port. I originally got this to power the gimbal, but then found it to be so much more versatile with just using it with the camera, powering the follow focus, and different accessories like that. I got about 7 hours of consistent runtime with this battery. This was shooting short spurts as well as keeping the screen brightness around 35%. I'd also turn the camera and the battery grip off when I didn't need it. Instead of having the camera continue to pull from the battery pack, I would cut the battery pack off once the camera's battery was fully charged. This allowed the battery to last a lot longer. I like this battery more because it's not quite as heavy as a V-mount, and you can buy 3 sets of replacement 18650 batteries for almost the cost of one V-mount. Because of the heavier weight, it made carrying the camera a bit harder. The grip on the camera is pretty thick compared to standard mirrorless cameras, so I added a hand strap that makes carrying it 10 times easier. It also takes some of the strain out of your hands from having to grip the camera so tight. This is probably my favorite part of the setup. I had to keep the right side clear because I'm constantly toggling on my false colors, NDs, or pressing record, so it didn't make sense to go with the right side handle. I keep a 1TB T5 mounted to the bottom of the cage, and I think it's extremely convenient and secure. Just in case 1TB isn't enough though, the Condor Blue T5 SSD mount that used to be at the top of the rig is now attached to a cold shoe adapter that can slide in on the top of the cage. 1TB is never enough though, just throwing that out there, it's never enough. To get clearance for the microphone or other accessories, I use a hot shoe extension that goes to the right side of the cage. I personally don't use a monitor because the screen on the Pocket 6K Pro is 1500 nits and now tilts, and that's pretty much all I need. Quick side note about using the crane. I had this issue with balancing the camera, and no matter what I seemed to do, I kept getting horrible micro jitters, and sometimes it looked like I was running through an earthquake. I finally called it quits and ordered the DJI RS2. I started balancing the camera and realized a few things. The RS2 doesn't allow you to slide the plate that you mount the camera to. I noticed on the crane that to get clearance, I had to slide the mounting plate all the way out. So to test if the crane was the issue, I mounted the Ursa with the Sigma 18-35. It balanced perfect and had no weird motor vibrations or weird jitters. What if I use an offset plate on the Pocket 6K Pro, even though you don't need it with the crane, just to keep from sliding that plate all the way out? This makes the mount on the crane stay fixed and more secure, which helps stabilize the odd-shaped pocket line of cameras. Before using the offset plate, I could only increase the motor strength on the crane to about 15 for the tilt axis, which was never enough. So when you start walking, it would do this bobble and you really couldn't fix it unless you added warp stabilizer in post. Now that I'm using the offset plate, I can get the motor strength set to about 65 and there's no vibrations no matter how I position the camera, underslung, or even using my 45mm IRIX Cine Prime. So an offset plate from SMALLRIG is the solution to getting rid of the motor vibrations and micro jitters. I would recommend getting an offset plate so that you can keep the mounting bracket pushed all the way in as close to the tilt motor as possible without extending it. I figured that extending it just adds a little bit of give, which makes the motor work harder, but is not able to compensate, especially with the given weight that's on it. Now the entire setup balances on the crane with ease. I'm able to leave the battery on and get perfect clearance even when you're going into underslung mode, but you'll have to install the extension arm for that to work. I still use the Tilta left handle to pull focus while using the gimbal, and just a regular rosette handle for the right side. I am debating on getting the Tilta right handle so that I can do zoom and focus control without ever reaching up to touch the camera. And that's it. My setup is still very minimal. If I choose not to use the battery pack, I can just pop it off because it's attached to the V-mount. I also have my hot shoe adapter so I can still use my LEDs or the microphone or any other accessories that I want to mount to the top. If you found this video helpful in any way, I would love it if you gave it a thumbs up, and I don't know, say what's up in the comments down below. Until next time, y'all, keep creating, and I'll see y'all in the next one.